All right, time now for perspective, and our guest is Halyn Parizot, and we're going to speak about comedy. There's stand-up, there's sketch, but today we're looking in particular at improv comedy, a medium based on improvisation, often from audience suggestions. And Halyn Parizot joining us on this set. You're the director at Paris Secret's improv comedy show. Ironic name, because I didn't even know there was improv comedy in Paris.
It's a secret.
It is a secret.
It's our big secret. Yeah, actually, I mean, there was improv comedy in Paris before I came. I didn't bring it.
You've been here since 2016.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we do Paris Secrets with Again, and they've been doing improv here. And there's other groups that even do comedy in English, improv comedy in English. So
that's great. Well, your husband, you work with him as well. He had a previous life as an international banker, I believe.
Yeah,
so
previous life.
How did you get into comedy?
Actually, my dad took me to my first improv show when I was 10 years old. He knew because I was always making up stories on my own and making big grand productions in our house. And he took me to see it, and I instantly fell in love with it. I watched it for years. I've always loved comedy, like SNL. I watched the originals growing up, so I think I've always just liked making people laugh, and I've always loved to laugh.
SNL, for our viewers, Saturday Night Live, if you're not familiar, great show. Check it out on Saturdays in the U.S. Real quickly, I wanted to ask you about that. You found this perhaps innate talent at the age of 10. What about for someone who might not know if they're funny or not? Is this something that can be taught?
It absolutely is. I hear that a lot. I think people are always like, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, but this conversation is improvised right now, so you're doing improv all day long. But I think people think they have to learn to be funny, but really it's about what makes you laugh. You know, I'm not great at puns, but I have friends that are great at puns, and they do that on stage. I do what I do. I do what makes me laugh. I do what I think is funny, and you bounce off of each other. So I think improv can absolutely be taught, and we actually teach classes. Again, teaches classes in French, and we're working on adding classes in English. So please come learn it. Right. We'll teach you.
A time-honored tradition, the pun for journalists. The only rule I know about improv comedy is I think it's called yes and. That's it. That's it. I don't know any of the rules or structures. Could you give us a quick run-through as a sort of beginner, a débutant?
Improv 101?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yes and is definitely a huge tenet of improv. Listening is a huge tenet. I think improv is really at its core just about building off of someone else's ideas, adding what is obvious to you, observing the outside world and then bringing it onto the stage is a huge tenet of improv. But yes and is definitely at our core because it's just like building, honestly. You make an offer, I say yes to that, I add to it. Mm-hmm. You say yes to my offer, we add to it.
And all the while trying not to be too zany or wacky, just sort of being more believable, right?
Right, like so we have a thing called the circle of expectation, and you want to stay within that circle just to make it clear for the audience, because you don't want to be so random and crazy all the time or else it's not enjoyable, and usually you're not enjoying it. You're working very hard. So yeah, we definitely try to make things obvious and clear.
Does this circle of expectation change between like who's in the audience? Do the French people interpret it differently than Americans might?
I think there is definitely a difference between French and American audiences. There's plus and minus to both of them. But I think that, yeah, the expectations are a little bit different, but there are universal truths, I watch shows in French. I don't speak perfect French, and I watch a lot of shows of my husband's or at Again, and I may not understand everything, but we understand romance, we understand hate, we understand awkward situations, we understand these things without having to have the exact same cultural background. And I think that's what we strive to do in Paris Secrets, because it's all about imagining people complexly. Our show isn't just comedy, Paris Secrets, it's also drama. It's also boring, everyday, mundane lives. And we combine all that, and people really understand it. A lot of our audiences speak French natively, but they come to see it in English, and they understand it, and they understand the vulnerability. They understand what we're trying to do. So,
and that builds off what we've seen in a lot of French theaters, these sort of one-man, one-woman shows, where they're not like a stand-up comedy that you might see in the U.S. or U.K. They're sort of a full life experience.
Yeah.
Has the audience in Paris here, what sort of feedback have you had from them?
I think a lot of people are shocked that Americans want to do something that's not just big and crazy and loud all the time, because our show deals with a lot of subtlety and nuance and calm moments. And I think French people really respond to that aspect.
Still, it's a bit of a rush going up on stage with nothing written. I can't imagine anything that would be more frightening than having an audience look at you and say, okay, entertain me.
Or being on live television.
At least I'm being paid.
No, but it's learned, of course. I think, like you said, can it be learned? It can, and it's learned through a lot of failure. That's a big tenet of improv, is learning to enjoy the failure. If you make a mistake, laugh at it. Don't just like fall apart. Get back up and try again. I did a lot of bad shows before I started doing good shows. I think that's something that people don't see. They don't see the years of hard work and stress and panic. Now it's second nature. Although before every show, I think we are a little bit like, huh?
Okay. And on that note, now that they're done with all the batches, go check them out in Paris. It's Again Productions and Paris Secrets Improv Comedy. Halyn Parizot, thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, a quick reminder of our top story. One man is killed after Hurricane Michael slammed into Florida's Panhandle, the strongest storm to hit the region in nearly half a century. It's been downgraded to a tropical storm as it crosses into Georgia.